Hello, and welcome now to the rest of the game, basically. And we can say that because at the very end of the game, here's the deal, is at the very end, just before the last boss, there is something called Final Descent, where you jump down 13 stones, and each one of those stones you have a random chance to get into a battle. And the manipulation, in order to get us 0 encounters, continues now, and now is where it becomes like something that you're going to be paying attention to from now right up until the end, basically, with a little bit of a calm spot in the middle. So first, I said continues. I didn't say it starts now. Remember way back here? Remember back in Bone Village, when we entered Bone Village, we had to enter on a certain in-game time. Well, it's time to explain all of this now, and I'll try to be relatively abridged about this, since I tend to get in the woods a little bit with my technical explanations. But here's the deal. The stones of Final Descent have a random chance to give you a battle each time, and the thing about that is that it is it's a field, and so it uses field RNG in order to decide whether to give you a battle. And as we discussed in my Field RNG video, we know exactly how that system works. So essentially, RNG is a predetermined, hard-coded list of every value from 0 to 255 shuffled into a certain order. All the numbers are shuffled up, each one appears once, and they are hard-coded into the game. In this order, that's the table. And we refer to our list value as where we are on that table. Now, stone is essentially the order of that table. Stone, in very short terms, is a clever way that they've implemented to reorder that predetermined list in one of 16 different orders. And the way that they achieve that is that instead of list going one down every time, giving the numbers one at a time straight down the list, instead it only does that when stone is 1, and the way that it's achieved is that stone at 1 is added to list. That puts you on the next position, and then you get that new random number. But stone can actually be one of 16 different numbers. Right now it's 255, which means if I were to do, or if there were a field script that were to ask for a random number right now, it would actually add 255 to list, and then return the new number with it wrapping around at 256. Alright, so that little refresher on Field RNG comes into play right here because we actually have predictably mapped out, Ace Zephyr mapped all this out and wrote it down, what is every single possible Final Descent that you can get. As in, when you enter the Final Descent, if your stone is 1, but then your list is any value from 0 to 255, this will be the Final Descent that you get. You'll get these encounters on these rocks, on this example for 6. If your stone is 1 and your list is 26, that's a 6 encounter. Oofta, that's bad. So, here's the deal. Here's why it all matters, and here's why everything for Final Descent Manip starts at Bone Village. There are a couple big, nice windows, big gaps of space where you can get 0 encounters, and the one that we are most easily able to use occurs under the stone 49. If we go to stone 49 and we scroll down a bit, you see right here there's this gigantic window of several list values in a row that give you 0 encounters, meaning this isn't an incredibly precise thing to do. It's relatively precise, but not incredibly, because we are just trying to land in this window. But if we're a little off, a little slow, there's several, ticks of RNG that doesn't give us an encounter still. And then even beyond that, if we're even slower and accidentally allow even more RNG to tick by, well, we're only punished with 1 encounter for several of the ticks. And then 2. So So this is pretty ideal right here. So this is the grand idea of what Final Descent manipulation is. First of all, we use Bone Village to set stone to 49 for the reason that it has this big gap. Then, when we are in Cosmo Canyon, and then that just sits like that for hours. It never changes for the rest of the game. It's always going to be at stone 49 for the rest of the game. That's kind of why Brutal named it stone, is because it's set in stone at that point. Now, then, what we're going to do is, much later in the game, when the rest of the game's RNG ticking is very predictable and there's not much left of it, we are going to set our list to a specific value. Now, that value that we're going to set it to happens to be 154, and the reason is because 154 is a number that we can set it to due to the mechanics that we're about to get into, and then this is a reasonable amount offset back from the window. We're going to set it to 154, and then for the rest of the game, on the relevant screens, we're going to be cognizant of RNG moving, and move in such a way that is going to allow all of these ticks to pass, and then we're going to then we wrap around to the top, we allow all this to pass, and we are going to land right in this window. I think we actually do land somewhat towards the back half of the window, but that's fine. 0 encounters in Final Descent, and you got to do that right now in the walkthrough. All right, so the whole deal with setting stone at Bone Village, I did already cover that during the Bone Village segment. However, we're just going to refresh it here because now is when it actually comes up. So let's refresh it here. How it works is when we come in here, we talk to this guy and we dig for the lunar harp. But when we initiate this digging game, if you keep your eye on stone right now, the screen fades black, and then boom, stone just changed, and then it loads in. That right there is when stone changes. And it actually changes depending on your IGT. And so in order to achieve stone 49, when we menu in front of Bone Village here, the way that we're going to line up the IGT is if we exit this menu at the right time and then run straight up to the guy and talk to him, we'll land on the correct IGT. And on PlayStation hardware with fast disk speed, what you want to the times that you want to land on are, just look at your seconds digit, 12, 28, 44, 56. Just memorize those numbers, or write them down. 12, 28, 44, 56. Those are your 4 options. Now, I called out very specifically PlayStation hardware with fast disk speed. This should also be about the same for DuckStation, but you might need to look at it a little bit. For BizHawk, however, we have to leave 3 seconds before that, because BizHawk takes about an extra 1.5 seconds on each loading screen, and this is 2 loading screens. So instead of 56, I left it 53 right there, you saw, and boom, that set stone to 49 just like we wanted. So once again, 12, 28, 44, 56. When you see the seconds digit, you don't necessarily time closing the menu as it ticks over. You know, you're not like anticipating it and trying to hit close the frame that it ticks over. No. Look at the seconds digit and visually confirm it. Visually watch it flip over. And at that point, you know, essentially as soon as you can, close the menu, run straight up to this guy, and just mash through his text. And on BizHawk, though, because of 2 loading screens, about 1.5 seconds extra each, knock it 3 seconds back if you want to practice this and go at, you know, 12, 28, 44, 56 minus 3 seconds. And there you go. That sets our stone to 49, and it's going to be that for the rest of the game. So then, hours later, we come up to this spot in our walkthrough where we need to run up and talk to Bugenhagen, and this is where we're going to set our list value to 154. And then there's a little bit of trickiness we have to do after that when we're in the City of the Ancients. But once we've done the little bit of trickiness, it's just a race at that point on the RNG screens. in order to land in the window. So the way that we set list to 154 is we use this screen right up here. There are two very important elements on this screen. One of them, the thing that is actually changing list and moving our list value around, is this Weathervane. And then the thing that we use to identify when we are on the list value that we want is the satellite. So here is what is happening here. Every time that the Weathervane jiggles, it does a jiggle, and how it's scripted is that it jiggles, and when it's done jiggling, it asks for a random number, and it uses that random number, you know, your list value, to determine how long it should wait before it jiggles again, right? And it just does that. So it sits here. It is currently waiting the amount of time that was determined. Then it jiggles. And now that it stopped, it chose a random amount of time to wait. And then it jiggles. Random amount of time to wait. And then it jiggles again. All right, so that's how it works. Here's the deal, though. It's coded very strangely. There are 4 outcomes that it can choose as for how long to wait. When it grabs the random number, it wants a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3, and those are its 4 outcomes. But what's very odd about this Weathervane is it doesn't just mod the random number it gets by 4. Because remember, every time that a random value is given to a field script in this game, it's between 0 and 255. And normally, you know, you would have it just mod it by 4, and that'll give you a 0, 1, 2, or a 3. Instead, what this Weathervane does is it repeatedly asks for a random number until it gets a 0, 1, a 2, or a 3. And that is why this list value goes flying every time it stops. So let's watch this here. So I've got the emulator paused right now. We're going to go frame by frame for a bit. And you see it's jiggling right now, the Weathervane is. And it just stopped jiggling. So at this point, if we advance frame by frame, you see every single frame, it's grabbing one random number. And so list is advancing by 49 because stone is 49. Every frame. And it's going to do this until it hits 0, 1, 2, or 3. Oh, there it goes. It hit list 9, which, again, that means that doesn't... It's not list value 0, 1, 2, or 3. It wants the random number that's actually returned to be 0, 1, 2, or 3. And the random numbers that actually correlate, you know, that means 9. Position 9 on the RNG table is one of those numbers. Position 154 is one of those numbers. Position 218 is one of those numbers, and position 76 is one of those numbers. So those are the 4 possible list values that this thing is going to stop at, and the one that we want, as previously discussed, is 154. So how do we identify when it has landed on that number? The answer is how long it sits here and waits before it moves again. Because here's the deal. Because stone is 49, because we know what stone is, that also means that we know what order the cycles are going to be. And the way that we measure it, you know, the easiest way to measure it is to look at the satellite and count how much time it has to spin, or how many spins it's able to complete before the Weathervane jostles again. And it's always, with stone 49, it's always going to be the pattern 1 rotation, 1 rotation, 2.5 rotations, 4.5 rotations. So let's watch it. And it starts when it stops, by the way. So it gets 1, it's jostling, so when it stops, boom, look over, and you see it completes 1, and then it starts jostling. It stopped, okay, come over here. That's 1, 2.5, jostles, it stops, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.5, and then it jostles. And now we see the pattern repeat once again. And I'll just show you the 1 for boom right there, and there you go. So you kind of use your peripheral vision here, you know? You're looking at the, at least what I do is I'm looking at the Weathervane, and the moment that it stops, right, I'm checking, you know, where the weather or where the satellite is, and begin your spin count from that spot, you know. This isn't like the save crystal for elevator manip where there's like a specific spot, like let's say this is 0 and we always count from here. No. You look at this thing, and the moment that it stops, like boom, right there, this is your 0, right? And you count from there. Now, very conveniently, I mentioned that the 4 values are 1, 1, 2.5, 4.5, always in that order. What's very convenient about that is list 154 is the 4.5 spinner. And so all we necessarily have to do is wait until we see 3 spins. Because that means it's not 1 and it's not 2.5. It must be the 4.5. And the amount of time that you have to go is until the next time that the Weathervane stops moving. You know what I mean? So let's show what I mean here. So if we're counting right now, it just stopped, so we go 1, 2.5. Okay, it's moving now. So now, okay, now go. So 1, 2. Boom, we see that it spun 3 complete times. That means we know that list is on 154 now, just visually looking at the screen. And to show you, and so what you do at this point is you just leave the room. Because when you leave the room now, your list is set and stuck at 154. I'll take a save state, and we'll just, you know, we'll leave. Because what happens next is, you know, you just come in here, you have some cutscenes, your list is 154. Ultimately, you get teleported out of Cosmo Canyon, so you don't need to worry about it moving again from the Weathervane on the way out, because you just get teleported out, right? Boom, you're set at 154, good job, you did it. Now, here's the amount of time that you actually have, though. So right here is where we identified the 3rd spin, and so we can leave now. The amount of time that we have to go is another complete rotation of the satellite, plus another half rotation, then this thing starts moving, and then it stopped, and now list just started moving again. So you have a ton of time. It's very, very simple and easy. So to show that once again, or to show that just how it works all together, what I do is, as I'm coming up, I just buffer up left and L1 to run straight left. And then I just run until I walk until I've opened the door, and then immediately start counting. 1, 2, there's 3, we go. And you can see we got it. That was 154. Because as I climb up here, right, as I climb up, and I'm walking towards the door, I'm also looking at the Weathervane. Oh, it stopped right there, so start counting. 1, 2, 3 is complete, so go. All right. So now let's put our list at a different value though here. What if we put it at, like, I don't know, just make it 0, so that we're not showing the same thing every time. So here we come in with a different starting list. Okay, the Weathervane stopped, and that's 1 rotation. Okay, so that was a 1. All right, it stopped, so now 1, 2.5, and there's the jostle. So now we actually know already that this one is the 3 rotation. 1, 2, 3, we can go. And there you go. List is 154. Now, you may have noticed, I said we know that this one's the 3 spinner now, because it's after the 2.5. So here's a very nice tip that'll save you a lot of time in a case like that. Because it's always 1, 1, 2.5, 4.5, and you want to go after, you know, after 3 spins, you can go early after you see the 2.5 and save a bunch of time. And so let's show how much time that is. The deal is, here we go. So this is just like last time, where we're going to get one spin. And now here's going to be the 2.5. So if I'm in a run, and I count 1, 2.5. Okay, so it's Jocelyn now. If I'm in a run, and I just saw the 2.5, I know that the 3 is next. So check this out. It stops Jocelyn right there. That's when List starts flying. And let's show how long it takes for List to hit 154. Right there, it's on it. And that was after about 1 spin. And then it completes the rest, you know, all the rest of the spins, and then the thing goes. So that means so this is a little advanced, just a tiny bit, right? This is just a tiny bit advanced. If you want to be safe, wait for 3 spins visually, but if you want to save some time here, if you see 1 spin, okay, so that was a 1. And then you see the 2.5 right here. Now just wait for a little over 1 instead of 3. So we see 1.25. I'll just go right there. And you know it landed on 154 because it takes about 1 spin to land on 154. It's just, if you didn't see the 2.5 already, then the 3 spins is just, you know, that's how you know for sure. But if you saw the 2.5, then there you go. So there's one more odd thing to talk about here. And that is, I mentioned that the random value chosen, when it receives the 0, 1, 2, or 3, that's what informs the Weathervane how long to wait for. But that means that all of the time that it spends shuffling List around is also part of the wait time. That's also part of the spin. And so what that means a couple things. So let's briefly discuss this. That means that 1, 1, 2.5, 4.5 is only the order if you're on stone 49. If you're on another stone, it won't even be those numbers anymore. It won't even be, you know, 1, 2.5, 4.5, 1. Wait, that's the same. It won't even be like 2.5, 1, 4.5, 1, or something like that. It's going to be totally different numbers because the different stones are also going to change the amount of time that it takes the Weathervane to find its next desired random number each time. So if your stone is off, you'll kind of know right away. But the fact that the scrambling of your List value is part of the waiting period, that also kind of throws us off in another way. So let's visualize this. All right, so here's my visual on RNG in this game. It's kind of like a ring because it's got 256 values on it, and then it repeats. So it's almost like you're going around a ring and then it loops. And the reason that they're not in numerical order is because stone changes the order of the positions. But no matter what stone you have, right, it's still a ring. It still goes through all 256 values, just in a different order, and then repeats. So what's happening with the Weathervane is it cycles, it keeps on grabbing random numbers until it strikes one of the ones that it likes, one of the ones where that position on the table is 0, 1, 2, or 3, which happen to be these 4 values. So it strikes that one and stops because that value then meets the conditional that tells it, okay, it's time to wait this many frames before jostling. Then it waits that many frames, it jostles. When it's done jostling, it starts running its script again. Find me 0, 1, 2, or find me a random number. Is it 0, 1, 2, or 3? No, then find me a random number. Is it 0, 1, 2, or 3? No, find me a random number. And the whole time it's staying still as it's doing this. Then boom, it hits the next one. And then that tells it to wait a certain number of frames and then jostle again. So it does that, jostles. Okay, it stops, or it's finished with the jostling, time to find the new one. So then it's cycling through all the random numbers until, boom, it hits this one. stops, right? And then after it does its whole thing again, it goes, and it hits this one, which is the one that we want, right? This is the 3-spinner, and then it goes, and then it starts the pattern over. So this here is kind of a visual as to it stopping. It stops on each one of the spots. But this is why the amount of time, this is why the amount of spins is not just the amount of time that it's being told to wait, but also the amount of time that it's actually taking it for it to cycle through the RNG before it hits a number that it likes. Here is why this is important. Including the amount of time that 218 tells it to wait and the cycle, that's 1 spin for this one. The time to wait here and the movement from here to here is 1 spin. The time to wait here and the amount of time it takes to move from here to here is 2.5. And then it stopping here, and then also the time to travel from here to here is our 4.5 spins. So that is why when we're looking at the Weathervane, it's always those lengths of time. But the reason that I'm explaining all of this to you is because this is how it works while we're in the screen and while the Weathervane is in control of RNG. But here's the deal, is when you first enter the screen, you could be anywhere on the RNG table. And that changes the amount of spins that you see on the very first cycle. When you first enter the room, you might be right here. And so you're not going to see the full this to this, and then wait this amount of time, which would be 1 spin. You might just see only from here to here. So when you first enter, and let's say it's the 2.5, right? Let's say you're on this part of the wheel where you go from here to here, and you would normally see 2.5. If you enter and your RNG is right here, the Weathervane is going to take control, put it to here, wait the length of time, and then go, which would normally be 2.5 if it were starting here. But if it's starting here, that's less time, which means it's less spins. So you might first enter the room, and this is only the very first satellite spin count from when you enter the room. You are going to see, what this all boils down to is you are going to see a slightly less amount of spins than the 1, 1, 2.5, 4.5. You might just see a flat 2. And if you just, or you might see less than 1. If you see less than 1, you know that was a 1. If you see like a flat 2 or something, that was probably the 2.5, right? I have very good news for you, though. The 4.5 cannot be shortened to less than 3. So if you go in right away and you see 3 right away, then go for it. Awesome. But it might just be a little confusing when you first enter. Let's show you what I mean here. So I think list 216 ought to raise some hell, because that is going to hit the 2.5 as soon as possible in such a way that significantly cuts the 2.5 short. So again, when you first enter and you see the cock stop for the first time, boom, and you start counting, you might see 1.5. Oh, and then so that started moving after like 1 3/4, right? But it was long, so you just have to, basically, for the first one that you see, you have to just round it up. You know what I mean? So, because it's just going to be whatever it would normally be cut short. So 1 3/4 rounded up is, that was the 2.5. So now we actually know that if we only wait like a single spin here and then go, we know that we got 154, because we know that the 3-spinner is after the 2.5. So once again, to show that at full speed. So again, this is really advanced. You can just wait for 3 spins, but if you pay attention to this detail, you can save yourself time. So this is a weird circumstance, list 216, because as we'll count, it's more than one, but so that must have been the 2, but it got cut short, so that must have been the 2.5, so that means this is the 3, which also means we can go after only 1 1/4 spins or so. So there you go. So to wrap this all up, the basic idea is that you come in here and you wait for after the Weathervane stops moving. You wait until you visually see 3 complete spins from the satellite, at which point you have a ton of time to leave, and that sets you at list 154. If you want to be savvy and save a little bit of time, you can remember that the 3 always comes after the 2.5, which means that if you see 2.5, you can go after only 1 1/4 on the next one, because that's how much time it takes to hit the list value you want. So that was 2.5. Okay, it stopped, so now 1 1/4. We just go at that point, because we know at that point the 4.5 is already locked in at that point. We can go early to save some time. And then lastly, the very last tip is that when you very first enter the room, we'll just put it at something totally random here, like 200. When you very first enter the room, the first one gets cut short, and you have to round up. So, okay, it stopped. 1, 2. Okay, so that was the 2.5, because it went after 2. So now we wait for 1 1/4, and we go. And as you can see, we nailed it. Alright, so that is satellite spins. I hope that that's all very nice and clear. Alright, so once your list is locked in at 154, we'll return to the walkthrough for a little bit, but if you're here like really specifically for FD Manip, the next very, very relevant thing for FD Manip is once we get into City of the Ancients. So pay attention to the City of the Ancients movement to keep your Manip on. And then after that point, it's just a race to the end. And I'll be talking about which screens are RNG sensitive as we go through the Northern Crater. But that's the next spot. All right, so once you're in here, all you got to do is run in here and talk to Bugenhagen. So we get a short cutscene here. All we have to do once we're at the top is just talk to the huge materia and go back down. All right, so after this cutscene, when Cloud is standing here, get ready, because once you're done mashing, you just hold up left, you'll see the huge materia, you get 1 text box, and go back down. Third option to go back down real quick. And that teleports you right back out to the Highwind. And at this point, we need to go to City of the Ancients. So, just make a run back and talk to the pilot. Flying to City of the Ancients is going to be a straight northeast flying. So here we are, just buffering square up and right. And this should fly you directly to the city. There is one very small thing to talk about here. So I land a little bit of a ways back. First of all, this area, you can't get random battles here, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. Later, when we come back out of here, remember when we used, like, Cloud getting off the Chocobo to trigger that one cutscene? There's a similar thing here, where when we come back out of Temple of the Ancients, we're gonna talk to the Highwind, and then Cloud is gonna run back a little bit. And if that running back a little bit puts him, like, makes him collide with the City of the Ancients, and you load back into City of the Ancients, you soft lock your game, because when you come back out, Diamond Weapon doesn't exist, and you can't progress. So anyway, if you fly straight up, it ends up with a decent little bit of distance to run up here, and so it's just healthy to do that. But anyway, this time that we come into City of the Ancients, this part is a lot of just, like, cutscenes and talking, but because of Final Descent Manip, it's actually quite fun. You know, because the gameplay parts of it are very specific. So these first 2 fields, you don't got to worry about at all. There's no RNG advancement. However, starting on the next screen, there is RNG advancement, and so let's show that. So right when we run in here, if you look at that list value, let me zoom it back in real quick. You'll notice here that that list is now moving, and what we need to do is we need to land it on the value 1, and you'll see I did it right there. But what if I actually show you how quick of a pass that is? Luckily, like, there's a setup for it that I just did, and I mean, if you look at the input display, you can already figure it out. But check it out. If I don't look at the list value right now, did you see how quickly it went? It was only there for just a few frames. Like it's only one for 3 or 4 frames. This is kind of the tightest thing of the entire setup, and because of the way that different things call RNG, it's very important to get there on 1. After this part, you pretty much just have to be relatively fast everywhere and you'll be fine. But on this part, you need to be pretty precise in order to get the scripts to play nice and get you to be able to leave on the list value that you want. And so here is the strat. Here's the setup. Just buffer run and write into the screen. Just run and write. It's actually very easy. Run and write, and then when Cloud's behind this crystal thing, add down. So now you're down, right, and run. When the camera starts to pan up, that means that Cloud is like teleporting right now. So when the camera is moving upward, switch to just down and left, and hold down and left all the way until Cloud stops right here. See, Cloud got stopped by a cutscene right here, and there's going to be a text box that comes up. At that point, start buffering up left and X and mashing circle. And as long as you mash circle okay and get rid of that text box neatly, you'll get the 1 on list every time. So all at once, it's run right, behind the crystal, add down. When the camera moves, down left. When Cloud stops, up left and mash circle. And there you go. So as long as you mash circle, you should be good. And don't worry too much about mashing circle. I mean, do it. Do your mashing well. But don't over worry about it as long as you mash decently. Because of the rule where if you can hit circle during any of like the last 3 frames of a text box typing out, and it will frame perfect close for you. And so you have a pretty big window to hit circle and have the text box close frame perfect, and then you even have a few more frames of unperfect text box closing where you'll still be fine. And then, as you can see by me just standing here, once you're on this screen, you're fine for now. It's just that last screen that advances RNG. So at this point, just run straight up and mash through some dialogue. So you'll notice at this point, list starts incrementing again. But all of this is auto advance, and so you really don't have to worry about it. Like, you know, RNG is just going to increment a set amount at this point. During that little scene. And then when we got to the ho 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 text box, it wasn't advancing anymore. So even that text box doesn't matter. Now on this next screen after the waterfall, RNG does start incrementing again. Again, it's very easy. All you have to do is buffer up left and run. And there is a text box you have to clear, but even if you clear this text box immediately, like right now, you'll notice I still can't move Cloud. So you have all this time to close that text box before right there when paralysis breaks. And right here, make sure to hold up and run to initiate this cutscene. And here we go, just a bunch more dialogue to mash. And so yeah, at this point, pretty much all of your responsibilities for FD Manip is just to go fast. Like, the manipulation has basically already happened, and now the rest of the process is to just not miss your window. So when Cloud stretches here, that's when I start to pay attention again. Because when the party member runs back into Cloud, be buffering down and run to leave this area. But warning, you are leaving into the RNG advancement screen. So we got to be on our toes to leave the screen optimally in order to not waste any RNG ticks. So here we go. So you run down, and then so for the next screen, this is important. Be buffering right and run already. Buffering right and run until Cloud is stopped for the cutscene. And then this is sort of the most crucial, like most difficult part as far as now that we've done the manipulation. I was saying that like it's all about just like being fast and not screwing up now. This part is kind of nerve-wracking because you have to mash dialogue here while list is advancing. So here you go, just, you know, mash as best you can through this cutscene here. And then an FMV is going to load. And so list is actually advancing during this FMV as well, but, you know, just like the last time that it was auto-advance, this is a set amount of RNG advancements that is accounted for in the manip, you know? However, yes, as Ace is saying, that because list is advancing during that FMV load, that means that if you have any disk issues that causes this FMV to load in an inconsistent amount of time, that's going to screw with your manipulation. That also means if you're practicing in BizHawk like I do, it takes BizHawk too long to load this FMV, and so it's going to seem like it's tighter than it is. But when you're on console and you're on fast disk speed and your disk doesn't skip, you're going to be fine. And now once you're on this screen, RNG is not advancing. So you've got more dialogue here, but you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, just be wary that if you're using like Diesel's FMV or FD Manip video to learn FD Manip, or maybe Hype Ghosts, like if okay, hang on, we gotta pay attention here. If you're using one of their videos to learn FD Manip and you're trying to match your list value up with theirs, at this point, you might find it to be very difficult or impossible to keep up with them if you're on BizHawk, and that's because of the loading time on the FMV. But don't worry, it's fine. Okay, so anyway, when Scarlet moves her hand and says, "The Sister Ray," that is your cue to start paying attention again. That is the last text box, and you should be buffering up, right, and run at this point, because we are about to load back into that screen where we need to exit optimally to not allow too many ticks of RNG to happen. And it's just this field we need to worry about, and then we're fine. So, up, right, and run. And as we load back in, Cloud's running up the stairs. Once Cloud is on the stairs, you can switch to just right. Once the camera starts to move down, you can switch to up left. And then I switch to left about right here. When Cloud is about halfway through the waterfall, or like the waterfall is kind of in the middle of the screen, I switch to down left. And then when Cloud is when Cloud's body is over this particular thing right here, this thing, I switch to just left. So at this point, just left exits the room. And then there you go. That exits with as few ticks of RNG as possible. As you see, our list is a little bit behind what it would be if you were following one of those other videos that doesn't use BizHawk, but it's going to be okay. So anyway, all in one motion then. That is up right, into just right, up left, into left, down left, left. And there you go. And then, just like on the way in, we don't have to worry about list advancement on these next two fields because they don't have anything calling RNG. So once you've exited the room, you know, and you've self-assessed that you think you did a good job, you know, you did a good job. Good job. You did it. Let's go.